Are we at the dawn of the digital dollar? We're going to talk about that in this Stopping Socialism TV segment. As always, I am Donald Kendal, joined by Justin Haskins. But before we get into this topic, I have to put that out there that it's up to you to help us get this message to as many people as possible. And you can do it very easily. Hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to our channel. It's the only way to break through the algorithms. Otherwise, big tech will make sure that our content is seen by virtually nobody. So we need your help to get this message out there to as many people as possible. Justin, the digital dollar. This is an article that you sent me earlier today. You said that you wanted to do a video on it. Take it away.
So, obviously a lot of people are somewhat familiar with the concept of digital money with cryptocurrencies. Maybe people have heard about Bitcoin and Ethereum and other kinds of cryptocurrencies that have been in the news. What's been going on, what they may not be aware of, though, is that there are many central banks all over the world who have started looking into the possibility of creating a Bitcoin like currency that is controlled by a central bank, produced by a central bank. So, like the Federal Reserve in the United States is our central bank. And China is an example of this. They've already produced a currency. They haven't rolled it out totally, but they are in the process of doing that. And in fact, they've actually started cracking down and even banning other kinds of cryptocurrencies because they want to control the cryptocurrency market in China. The Federal Reserve has come out recently, that's what this story is about, and talked about the possibility of eventually rolling out a digital dollar, a purely digital currency. So there would be no printed dollars under this model. I mean, well, there might be existing printed dollars. They didn't say they were going to eliminate all the existing printed dollars in this particular speech that she gave. But what she did say was that they wanted to, in addition to the printed dollars, create a digital currency. There would be no, so for every new digital dollar they produce, there would be no printed correlation to it, right? It would just be purely existing digitally. And they talked about the benefits of having this digital dollar and that they're already started to study it. I believe that the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and MIT are working on producing some kind of a test for this, so that they could have they could have a model that would tell them, these are some of the pitfalls that we might have when we roll this out. The bottom line is they're laying the foundation, the Federal Reserve is, for creating a digital dollar here in the United States. Now, what I want to do is I like this article. This is in CNBC. I like this article because it highlights some of the things that they are saying at the Federal Reserve for why they need to have this digital dollar. And I first want to talk about those things because I think it points to something more. It's obvious when you see their justifications for it that there's something else going on here. Okay. So it says there in the second paragraph at the start of the story there, providing financial services to the nearly 1 in 5 Americans considered to be underbanked is one of the advantages that Brainard, she's the Federal Reserve governor, cited in a speech to a conference presented by CoinDesk. CoinDesk is very into digital currencies and cryptocurrencies and things like that. She also cited the safety of a Fed-backed system, as well as improvements in efficiency in cross-border payments or transactions between peoples in different countries. So she's talking about why we would be better off with a digital dollar. While stressing the importance of moving forward carefully, Brainard said that COVID-19 pandemic strengthened the need for a system in which a broad swath of the public has access to well-regulated digital money. All right, now I just want to stop for a second and let's think through these justifications. So we're talking about why we need to have a digital dollar. And the justifications given are that there are underbanked people. That's one justification. There are improvements in efficiency in cross-border payments, transactions between people in different countries, and that there needs to be a well-regulated digital money. Now, just think about these things for a second. Do the vast majority of people with money have any trouble making transactions with the current system that exists now? No. The vast majority of the transactions that you and I make are already transactions that occur in a very similar way to digital currency, right?
Right.
You're paying with your debit card. You're not paying. People don't pay with cash. A lot of people don't even carry cash anymore. And everyone who does carry cash also carries debit cards and credit cards and things like that to spend for digital currency. Does anyone have trouble making transactions with each other online? No, of course not. If anything, the COVID pandemic, more people started relying on making these transactions using these things.
Right.
She talked about underbanked Americans, and there are people who don't have access to checking accounts and things like that, sure. But why would having a digital dollar solve that problem in and of itself?
Yeah, this is something every time we talk about this is like something that's always in the back of my mind. Like, isn't like currently 90+% of dollars like not in any type of paper form? Like, it's just like they just hit a button and that's how they actually print new money. It's just then hitting the return button a few more times. It's not that they don't actually have printing presses and they're just raining cash dollars on everybody.
Yeah, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's really high. I mean, most of the new money is essentially digital money. I mean, that's what it is in effect. And how does this help underbanked people? It to me, it doesn't help them. They still have to have a bank account in order for this all to work, unless there's something else that they also want that they're not mentioning here. Like, I don't know, maybe the Federal Reserve, the central bank itself, starts providing people with bank accounts.
Yeah, that was going to be my next thing. Like, obviously everybody can digitally trade their money if they just have like an app on their phone that ties to their bank or something like that. So what could a system be that helps these unbanked people? It would have to be some type of centrally controlled thing, right? That's where you're going, right?
That would be the only way that any of this makes any sense. So why do I say all that? Why are we talking about this? Because a digital currency controlled by the Federal Reserve is maybe the most dangerous policy development that could possibly happen. And from a perspective of someone who wants individual liberty. And the reason for that is because if you have a digital currency, and it's controlled by the Fed directly, then essentially they can create money. You can't even say print anymore because it's not even, there's no possibility of printing with a digital money.
Right.
They can create money literally whenever they want. Whenever they want, they can create money. And they can track the money. And they can control how the money is spent. They could literally put a block on it, a code on it that says you can't spend it on X, Y, and Z things, or with X, Y, and Z people or companies or whatever. It would provide them with a massive amount of control over the economy, or at the very least, the potential for control. And put in the hands of the wrong person running the Fed, and this is important to keep in mind, we're talking about the Federal Reserve. We're not talking about the federal government. The Federal Reserve is not even managed on a day-to-day basis by the federal government. The Federal Reserve is a semi-autonomous organization. And people in government, members of Congress, don't even necessarily know who's running the Fed. Okay, as ridiculous as that sounds, that's the system that we have. Nobody even knows who all the people are involved in the Federal Reserve, yet they would have the power to create as much money as they want, whenever they want, at the drop of a hat, digitally, and then they would be able to tie, because they're the ones that own the dollars. You don't actually own that. A digital dollar is actually still owned and controlled by the Fed. So they could tie stipulations theoretically to those dollars and say you can't spend it on cigarettes because cigarettes are bad for you, or trans fats, you can't spend it on that, or whatever, guns, can't spend it on that, can't trade it with this company because they're not woke enough, can't do this, can't do that. They would have the ability to do that. It would also be extremely easy for them to say, you know what? You guys have too much wealth over there. We're just going to pull some of those digital dollars out of your account because there's no paper money tied to it at all. It would be so easy for them to do. And it would be even easier if there is Federal Reserve bank accounts where essentially you're just banking directly with the Fed. And that is inevitably going to happen. Now, later in the story, and the reason, I shouldn't say it's inevitably going to happen. I do think it is, but it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen. It could be stopped, but that is something they're going to call for. They've already had discussions about it. They use the same kinds of justifications that they're using here. But later in the story, I think it reveals the real thing here. It says, that the Federal Reserve remains committed to ensuring that the public has access to safe, reliable, and secure means of payment, including cash, Bernard said. As part of this commitment, we must explore and try to anticipate the extent to which households and businesses' needs and preferences may migrate further to digital payments over time. Again, we already have the ability to make digital payments. So what are we saying here? And then she says that that essentially, where is the comment? Oh, when Congress it says this is not her talking. This is CNBC. It says Bernard said that the pandemic presented an example of how important developing a Fed-backed currency could be. When Congress began sending relief payments at the outset, some individuals didn't get theirs for weeks because they either did not have accounts of their own information or their information was not updated with the IRS. A central bank digital currency would help get money more quickly to those people, she said. And then Bernard, this is a direct quote, in the United States, the pandemic led to an acceleration of the migration to digital payments as well as increased demand for cash. While the use of cash spiked at certain times, there was a pronounced shift by consumers and businesses to contactless transactions facilitated by electronic payments, blah, 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 blah. Essentially, what they're saying here is that they could more easily distribute. This is what the CNBC reporter is reporting. Bernard said they could more easily distribute direct payments from the government, relief payments to people easier and in a more widespread way if we had a digital currency. And I think that is, at the end of the day, really the main thing that they're interested in doing. How can we make sure that it's really easy for us to get cash into the hands of the people who we want to have it when we want them to have it?
Right. Easier to facilitate these like helicopter drops of money, these stimulus payments, which we've suggested that we haven't seen the last of them. And this is probably going to become like the new norm. Every period of time, whenever there's some type of dip in the market or anything like that, the easiest solution for these people is just open the helicopter doors and throw out some money. And this would really help facilitate that type of policy.
Exactly. And that's what the CNBC reporter is saying, although they didn't provide a very good quote from her indicating that. That's exactly what the Fed is saying here. They're saying that they want to be able to provide people with helicopter drops of cash on a whim whenever it's in their minds necessary, which could be anything. It could be anything at all. Could be a crisis. We know we've learned this the hard way over the past several years. Crises come up all the time, and then wouldn't it be great if we could just give people cash? They desperately need it, and it would be so easy to distribute it if it was all digital, and it would be even easier if people were banking directly with the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, I remember during the pandemic, maybe like 6 months into it, she like had some idea of like having some automatic triggers that once X happened, it would release some type of little like flood doors that pours more stimulus money on the economy. And I think that was like, I think her suggestion was that if the unemployment rate reached like a certain level, it's just all right, open the floodgates, dump more stuff. And surely there's no limit to the amount of triggers that would initiate some type of policy like that.
Exactly. And so we know from various other stories and other things information that have come out that they would love to have the ability to just provide people with this kind of cash on a whim. And it's only really it's possible to do it through the traditional system to some extent, but it's much easier to do and much easier to control after the fact, which is really the more important thing. If it's a digital currency, it's really easy to control how the money is spent, where the money goes, to track the money, to keep track of it, to make sure it's not going overseas, to make sure it's not going to the wrong people. And by the wrong people, that could just be whoever the Fed doesn't want it to go to, right? And this is a tremendous, tremendous amount of power, right? They say, what's the saying? He who has the gold makes the rules, right? Well, this is exactly that. If these people are in charge of the money and it's this easy to control how the money is spent, to track the money, to control the money, to put stipulations on the money, to put rules on the money, then they are the ones that make the rules. They're the ones that control society. They're the ones that have, this is not a conspiracy theory. There are people openly talking about this, saying this is why we need to have this kind of power over society. And I think that you can see it come out in these kinds of statements. The last thing that I want to say about it is they often are, one of the things that they'll do is they'll sort of position this as, well, you know, the reason there are all these people putting money into Bitcoin and things like that, other cryptocurrencies, is because they want all of these benefits that Bernard lays out in this article, right? They want easy payment systems, and they want to be able to transact across international borders easily, and they want to do this and they want to do that. And so we can provide all of that to them, but we can do it in a better, safer, more stable way because, you know, these currencies, who's regulating them? Who's paying attention to them? That's how they position it. That's how they position it in this CNBC article too. But that's not really why people want digital currencies. The main reason people want Bitcoin and things like that is not because it's easier for them to make transactions. I mean, it's already easy for people to make transactions in America. The reason they want it is because they don't trust the Fed. That's the reason they want it. Because they don't like the idea of the Fed being able to print as much money as they want whenever they want to print it. That's why they like it. Bitcoin has strict rules about how much Bitcoin can be made. It's not possible to make more Bitcoin than what the allotted amount is over time. It's not possible. There is a set limit, and everyone knows it. And that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is valuable, is because it can't just be, you can't just print 10 trillion more Bitcoin tomorrow if you want, like the Fed could, if they had a digital dollar, like they're already doing now, where they're just inventing money, trillions and trillions of dollars at the drop of a hat. That's why people are investing in these alternatives. That's one of the main reasons. I mean, there are other reasons too, obviously, but it's not because they want to have easier time transacting with people. Most people who hold digital currencies are not actually even using them to transact with anybody. They're holding them and trading them as investments in the future because they actually think that the current system is so dysfunctional and dangerous and broken that it's just a matter of time before the whole thing implodes. And then the Fed, who knows this? I mean, they know this better than anybody, that's why people want Bitcoin, come out and say, well, we can be a better Bitcoin because we can be just like them, except we'll be safer because it's backed by the government. When in reality, they know the whole reason they want to do this is to be the opposite of Bitcoin. So that they want to print trillions and trillions of new digital dollars all the time, and they want to control it and decide where it goes. That's the opposite of how Bitcoin works.
Yeah, isn't like the giveaway for all of this the fact that like China was the first country to really like make their major move on having some type of digital currency? I mean, it's not like it's like some, you know, innovative country, you know, like Norway or Sweden is like, you know what, we're going to turn this whole system on its head and we're going to decentralize or something like that. And we're going to have this new currency that's going to have all of these great benefits. No, it was China. And they're specifically doing it so that they can exercise that control that you're warning against. And like another thing is, I read this article, it was talking about some report that talked about how like 60% of the countries around the world, or central banks around the world, are exploring these concepts of having their own digital currency. And it's like, if that's not enough of like a warning sign that like all of the powers that be and all of the central banks around the world are like coming down to this as like, you know, this is gonna be the future. Like, I don't know what else is like a bigger warning sign than that.
Yeah. Well, and it like, let's just be really logical and really simple about all of this. Would it benefit the people who are at the Fed if they had that kind of power and they did have digital dollars and they could easily control them? Would they prefer that? Yeah, of course they would. Right? So then why wouldn't they want to? I mean, the idea that this is not about them, really. This is about you. It is ludicrous on its face because all of the supposed benefits of this, or the vast majority of them, are things we already enjoy from the existing system. We don't need easier digital transactions. We don't need, easy access to sending money over. Who's sending money overseas anyway? Like, how often is that happening where we're sending money overseas?
Right.
It's not even happening that much. And you know what? I've traveled overseas. And you know what I do when I go overseas? In Europe and places like that? I use my debit card. I use the same debit card that I have here in the United States. Wow. You make some telephone calls and you just use your debit card. So what is she talking about?
Right.
This is obviously just garbage. These explanations are garbage. The real reason they want this is because it allows them to control the currency.
It's also interesting that we have actually gotten like conflicting messaging from like the Fed. Them talking about, oh yeah, we're actively pursuing, these ideas. And then the next day they're like, oh no, we don't have any actual plans for it. And then the next day it's like, no, we've got some things that are in the works that we're going to be testing out. And it's just like, well, where are you coming from? Where's this actually? So it's like they're not being straight with us, even when it's something like this.
No.
It's an interesting thing. And like I said, China being the first out the gate pursuing something like this is like the biggest red flag that you could possibly imagine. This is something that Justin and I have been talking about kind of behind closed doors. This might be one of the first videos that we've done on it, but we will surely keep our ear to the ground on this topic and more. Justin, any last words you want to say on this topic before we wrap it up?
No, I think, but I will say this one last thing. If you're interested in seeing how this could become a problem, look into social credit scores and look at what China is doing, as Donald just said, and imagine a universe where you have social credit scores and you have a digital currency that's created by a central bank, controlled by the government. Imagine the possibilities.
Right.
And then look at that and compare it to all this talk that's going on about ESG scores, which we've talked about a million times. And now the possibility of a central bank digital currency.
Right.
And ask yourself, are these things eerily similar?
Right.
We already see it's happening in China. They're already doing it in China. This isn't theory. They're doing it in China. It's only and these things sound very, very similar to what they're doing here in the what they're talking about doing here in the United States over the next 5 to 10 years. So, yes, pay attention to that. Look into the details of it. And be horrified.
That's right. All right. Well, if you want to see more content like this, the easiest way to do that is Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube. Find a whole bunch of our videos. Make sure to like, subscribe, share that stuff. Also, you can find most of our all of our content, really, on stoppingsocialism.com. You can find most of that content shared across various social medias, whether it's Facebook, Stopping Socialism. We also have a Parler account and an Instagram account. Justin, where can the people find you?
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook, Socialist Twitter, and non-socialist Parler.
Nice. All right. Fantastic. We will talk to you guys next time.